Streaming. Give it a minute.
Yeah. Okay. About 30 seconds. So usually plenty.
All right. Well, welcome to the Water Service Committee meeting of 13th of May. To those who are watching this on live stream or later, welcome to you as well. It's a pleasure to be here. We've got quite a bit of business today. Welcome to staff as well as committee members, and we've got some rural representatives here as well because we've got some quite interesting discussions coming up. I just want to commend Carol for the minutes and the agenda. Looking through them, and they are very clear and succinct and good. And for people looking in, if you want to look at the agenda in future, that's all up on Council's website as well. And reflecting on last month's meeting, and we had a few little teething troubles, but we got there with technology and me learning. I have a subscription to The Economist magazine, and every year it puts out a democracy index. And this last year, the 20261, New Zealand is the second most democratic country in the world by that ranking, only beaten by Norway. And part of the reason that New Zealand is the second most democratic country rating in the world is things like this, where a council committee meeting is live streamed and anybody can look in on it, and we have a very open democracy. Agendas and minutes are all available. It's the same with central government. And lots of public feedback and consultation loops, and lots of auditing and accountability. And I think that all goes into what makes New Zealand a very democratic place, and it's pretty good. So long may it continue. Right, we have an apology from Mayor Craig, who is going to be about half an hour late to the meeting, but we'll be here a bit later. So what do we got first? We've got acknowledged Sandy and Councillor as here representing rural water, and we are still working towards having a rural rep on the committee, but that's a work in progress, I understand. Yes. And same with the Runanga, that's a work in progress as well at the moment.
I think that should be fairly imminent, I hope.
Yeah. Look, they're working on it, and I don't think it's far away. And the rural one, I'm hoping we'll have a meeting next week to sort out a read.
Yep. Sandy knows the rules, so if he's here for the third meeting. No. Not quite. Brilliant. And no conflicts of interest from any of the members, right? Obviously the standing one for me that was dealt with last meeting. Just in terms of the minutes of the last meeting, so we're on page 5 of the agenda. And again, thank you, Carol, for very clear minutes. Everybody is happy with the no questions or corrections in there?
Who wants to? Are you happy to move?
Yep, so move that will be minutes are as clear and as accepted.
Second.
Right, all in favour?
Aye.
Right. I note in the minutes that we actually had a public excluded last meeting relating to rural water supply committees, and we will have public excluded in this meeting at the end of the meeting relating to Downlands water supply. In both cases, the reasoning and justification for that is set out in the agenda. We're in a quite a large change and transition phase, and some of the items that are coming up on the agendas are quite sensitive and commercially sensitive as well. So hence the public excluded. We're going to try and keep that to a minimum, but I think for the next period there's going to be a few of those just as we deal with some of the tricky issues. Right. So we're going to move on to the reports. And the first report is from Melissa. Welcome, Melissa. And finance report. Well, I will say, because I do get to look at quite a few financial reports across the country, I really appreciate the fact that the variances and the changes you highlighted and read, it just made it really easy to pick out the key issues in the report as well. So thank you for that.
Excellent. All right, the first Three Waters Business Unit financial report is presented to the committee for the 9 months ended 31st of March 2026, which includes the water supply activity, wastewater and stormwater activities. The results for the 9 months to 31st of March 2026 is a surplus of 0.761 million against a year-to-date budget of 0.196 million deficit, with the variances made up of a combination of additional income and reduced expenditure, as noted. I'll take the report as read as far as the variance analysis goes. Is there any questions?
Question from me in terms of the report. It was clear that there's, I'm not sure whether you're going to want to deal with it here or later on in capital, but there's clearly some large capital items that are unlikely to get spent in the next 6 or 7 weeks. And could you just explain to the committee how they're going to get handled?
So when we look at our, I don't know, Dean wants to, do you want to talk to any of the expenditure?
Yeah, I can talk to the general sort of movements there. We, as part of the current plan, we budgeted for some significant upgrades to rural water supplies. As those projects have progressed, there has been a requirement for us to push out the delivery of those. So, for example, when looking at rudimentary options for 3 of the supplies, it's we've staged that delivery over a period of time. So what we've done is we've actually rebudgeted some of that work in future years, and we've relayed that to the regulator, so the Water Services Authority. They're aware as to the reasons why we've had to push those out. So all of those projects are underway. It's just a matter of timing.
And in terms of the budgets, they'll carry over into the next financial year as appropriate?
As they're not carried over, they've been rebudgeted.
Okay.
So
yeah.
yes, so at the end of the financial year, we review what was spent, what budget is required to be carried forward, and what may have been rebudgeted obviously doesn't need to be carried forward as well. And we've highlighted that in our budgets when we've crossed a line item out and said we're rebudgeting this for the next year, just to make it really clear where it's not a budget from one year that gets carried over to the next.
Just for you, Chair. There have been some amendments to those budgets as well. So initially we were looking at elements like $1.2 million to upgrade, say, Cannington, but actually upon review we've actually reduced that investment because Point of Entry provides a more cost-effective solution. So you might not see the close to $7 million in the 80 years.
Yeah, and nobody's going to beat you up for halving the cost of a capital works program. Hopefully
not.
Yeah, certainly not your ratepayers. So, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. With that rebudgeting, how are we tracking with the price changes because of the fuel increase? Do you still think we're meet budget, or is that going to potentially push some work out as well?
I don't know whether it's going to push work out. Dave's probably closer to the pricing at the moment, but some of them will be impacted for sure.
So just through there are different aspects with the different types of contracts. So we have some very higher cost components to do with 2 water treatment plants. Even the cost components for those treatment plants has gone up since we started negotiating, and some of those have international currency aspects relating to them. We also have one of our biggest projects there being a very long, in excess of 20-kilometre pipeline, so that's certainly impacted. But I personally don't believe it's as bad as what we thought that it might have been. And as part of that process, we won't know until we go out to tender.
Yeah, okay.
It's like we need to tender to gauge the appetite. Do do a portion and then have a deferral, but we also have the compliance aspects, so we're talking about ROI, the regulator. So you know, we just need to flag as well that the word affordability is part of that entire process as well. So we'll take that into consideration during those tender processes. So we do have 2 tenders. We're looking for the water treatment plants right now, and we're not far off the pipeline for that aspect as well.
Right, so once we get that in, we'll have a much better idea of where we're placed. Awesome, thank you.
Great. So as everybody knows, a significant degree of uncertainty in some of these things going forward that are certainly not in council's control.
Sorry, could I just ask, not only the affordability, can you get the stuff, you know, is it available, is it likely to be?
That's a good question. There have been various responses about that. So we hear that some companies are struggling to get some pipe, in particular those, it seems, for directional drilling thrusting. We've heard that contractors are communicating with each other, seeing who's got what on the shelf, because there seems to be a shortage of some of the product to create the pipe, but then some of that was colour related as well for the output. So to our understanding, it doesn't appear we'd be significantly or detrimentally impacted at this point in time, but anything can change overnight.
Yep. Okay. Melissa, just in terms of your overview report, this is on page 12, item 4, you're talking about ring fencing requirements, and we talked about that last month, and you note that you're nearly there, but a little bit to do. Do you just want to expand on that a little bit for the committee?
Sure. So the ring fencing requirements ensure that any charges between council and the 3 waters business units are fair and reasonable. So for our administration units, that covers the CEs, Department Communications, IT, corporate services, HR, those administration functions. We have to ensure that all the charges are fair and reasonable between the 3 waters unit and council. So we're still working through a process of gathering information and ensuring that the drivers that make up the allocation are fair. So we're still working through. We've not gone most of the way. We've still got a little way to go, and then we've got to review the outcome and still have another lens over it and say, is it still fair and reasonable? And then we can lock those allocations in for our next set of budgeting for 2027.
So is the objective to have that done by the end of June, or?
We would have liked to have, that was what we were aiming for initially, but time constraints are showing that, you know, there's a lot of work going on, and so it might be that it's definitely going to happen before the LTP budgets.
Right.
So that's the timeframe we're working towards now.
Just as a question on that, and maybe the C might want to respond as well. I know the intention was to run the business unit as of 1 July, as is a year early, knock all the rough edges off and get all the reporting, everything done. Do you think once you've got that overhead allocation sorted, and that might be October-ish or whatever, you would backload that into your financials, or back to 1 July?
I think you'd probably stick with the allocation as per the budget.
Yeah.
Perhaps, and then enforce that from 1 July next year.
Yeah.
From 2027. The reason being that the budgets are set on an allocation at the moment, and I wouldn't imagine that the allocation that we're currently providing is that far different from what we look at going forward. It's just another lens looking over at the fair and reasonableness of it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect it to be too dramatically changing.
Right.
Through the chair, I think the ideal position was to have those overheads organised by 1 July. However, I don't think it excludes us from checking all of our reporting and making sure that we've got the alignment for the Commerce Commission as well.
Yep.
Whether the outputs are, well, we'll have a methodology that we've used, and we can still check that against what would be delivered to the Commerce Commission post 1 July 2027. At least it gives us the opportunity to check all of those systems. So I think we're still heading in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. And clearly that's going to be having a look at the GL and the budget lines and make sure everything's as you want it for going forward as well.
Yes.
Yep.
That's right.
All right, any other questions from committee members on the financials?
If we turn to page 17 of the agenda is the consolidated statement of financial position. So as noted, it is in draft form as an internal peer review is yet to be completed. And it does include our 14% share for the Downlands Water Scheme. Is there any questions on the statement of financial position?
The only thing I would note is that the debt is well under control, and it is very pleasing to note in the report the rates position for Waimate District Council, both water and generally. Not that I'm entitled to comment on general, but in terms of the broader discussions around New Zealand, it's a particularly good position to be in, and I think staff and team should be congratulated on that. It's not everybody's having those discussions. Some of them are a lot harder discussions than these ones. So.
And just to clarify for the public, so when you talk about the downlands, that's included in that non-current liabilities borrowing?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, 14% share.
Yeah.
And we are going to be discussing downlands later in the meeting, public excluded. And no, doesn't seem to be any huge issues around rates and things like that. It all seems to be as designed, and yeah. All right. I'm trying to get down. So we've got a recommendation that the finance report for the 9 months is accepted.
Have you seen it?
Yep. All in favour? All right. Okay. So, Three Waters draft annual plan. And Mitchell.
You want me to go? Council presented the draft 2027 budgets at a workshop on the 5th of May. The Three Waters Business Unit draft 2027 budgets propose a deficit of $57,000 compared to the LTP forecast deficit of $158,000, so slightly less of a deficit. If we turn to page 22, the overall rates increase proposed at the workshop was 5.5%, with 4.2% being driven from the Three Waters activities. Point 8 in the report demonstrates the level of unfunded depreciation proposed for 2027, which is in line with the current year, 2026, and slightly below the forecast for the LTP of $258,000.
Can I just ask a question about that, just for clarity for myself? The reason that the depreciation is below is because that capital work hasn't happened when we thought it was?
Yeah.
Cool. So that will come in later once that work is completed?
That's right. Yeah. So with the phasing of depreciation, some of the projects for 2027 are in phase, expected to be completed halfway through the year.
Yeah.
So some of that depreciation is still to take effect from 2028.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Information on the revenue, investment and financing sufficiency assessments have been included for your information. And if we turn to page 23, the statement of financial position is included. We've had a small change due to the inclusion of the Downlands forecasts for 2026, so the opening position changed ever so slightly in the cash at bank. So it changes the benchmark down the bottom, the financing sufficiency benchmark, which was 387% to 388% by 1%. So you'll notice that when we publish our draft or final ending plan. Are there any questions on the report?
I was just going to note under point 12, again, very pleasing net debt to revenue ratio. Speaks of plenty of headroom if needed, which seems unlikely, but council is not bashing up against ratios and debt and things like that, which is a really great place to be.
Hopefully.
And each of the individual water scheme draft budgets are included for your information as well.
And again, thank you for the read. That when I was skimming through this, just to remind myself last night, oh, that's so helpful. And very clear where the rebudgeting is going and why. So, right, any other questions from committee members?
Probably more just in the less financial, but Dan, are you confident that the work that's been carried forward into next year will be able to be completed within that period?
Where the timing, I'm comfortable with moving forward, yes. Only because we're already in those processes and it's just a matter of finalising.
Yeah. Great.
We'll give you a little out on that, subject to availability of materials and other good things.
Thank you.
No, but I mean, you could go out to tender and everybody could say, yeah, look, give us 12 months.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. All right. Any Sandy, anything you want to ask there? No? Okay. So we have a recommendation that the Water Services Committee accept the Three Waters Draft Annual Plan 2026-27 report. Jackie is nodding her head.
Oh, yeah.
Right. All in favour?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that takes us a fair way down once we get through the individual scheme reports, where we're down to page 36. Major projects. Dave Inwood.
Thank you. This is the same format as the previous agenda item, and it really is, it's been presented just to give you an understanding of some of the aspects that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and particularly the major projects and some of the operational aspects. So what I would like to do is change this format going over time, so I'll assume that the take report will be read, but I'll just add a few extra comments to go with it. So we've had very pleasing outputs from most of our contractors in the last year, and so it's pleasing to see that our contract at Point Bush Road and Garlands Road we've now given practical completion, so that means that it's in a good space for the contractor and for council. The add-on there is going, I'll reinforce it, is going to take us quite some time to take the consumers off the rural supply onto the urban supply, and that will require individual discussions and agreements with each individual property owner. So there's a lot of work in that. It'll take up a lot of staff time.
Sorry, could I just ask you, had any negative feedback at all?
No, nothing.
That's good.
So the work, as I said, was carried out. There was one or two very minor complaints, and they were really just comments about level of reinstatement, which was very basic for the contractor to go and remediate. So overall, it really is us getting the statement out to the public in the immediate future that change will happen, because it will create that change from being on a rural water supply and the funding aspect for the rates onto the urban scheme. So that's quite a shift and lift in that entire process, and there are a lot of properties affected. So that's probably one of the biggest aspects we've got there. We're looking forward to getting Hunt's tender out as another aspect of that in the next week or two. Just said at the last meeting, this is probably one of the most challenging, with only a 10-metre wide legal road reserve and infrastructure in the way. So the comment that I had is that we would like to see an alternative solution being tendered, but that where it comes back now to the availability of certain pipe types and materials that might impact on it, it might end up being open trench, which would be not the most desirable, but it may be required to be of that format. So we won't know again until we go out to tender.
So, sorry, could I just ask Open trench versus directional boring, is there much difference in cost, or does it depend on the situation?
It depends on the situation and the material, the soil structure. It also, it's less invasive on the road for the reinstatement is the key thing as part of our
Yep.
agreement with the road and corridor manager. The contractors, some contractors that can undertake that alternative solution, they do prefer that aspect, and as I said in the previous report, we had a very successful outcome for that in Augustine Street with the sewer, so that was a lot less invasive than it would have otherwise been. The concern is the soil structure is not going to be the best, likely to be the best in Hunts Road, but there might be one portion, but not all of it, so that's where further investigation and availability of materials is going to help determine the outcome of that tender process. We don't want to get caught out either, so we certainly won't be awarding a tender for a certain methodology if there's potential for it to fail and incur additional cost. As alluded to earlier, our biggest contracts are the Otago Hook and the Lower Waiho water treatment plant upgrades. Well, one of them is the Otago one is a new water treatment plant. With that, we're just finalising that in excess of 20-kilometre pipeline alignment. So we've agreed on the desired preferred outcome now. So that means that we won't be required to install the more expensive and higher grade PM20 rating pipe. So that's a saving in one way. And it's also less of a risk with pipes with those higher pressures as well. So the decision's been made there. With the change, it just means that we have to complete a slight additional survey and design drawings because we're actually taking the pipe further in a slightly different direction near the end of the project. So, but that will provide full connectivity, and again, doing the swap out to enable the hook scheme to be disconnected is a primary objective with this because it's not a compliant scheme. So we do look forward to having the new Tavistock 2 bore connected with these other things. And as Dan alluded to earlier, the budgets have been adjusted in all these areas as well. The urban works that we've got, so we've got High Street that we're still working through the best alignment for a dedicated pressure main that will be done piecemeal over a number of years. There's no need for that to be done as one entire project. It is a dedicated main, there are no service laterals, so we're just finalising that aspect. Our wastewater in item 10 there is some concern about the integrity of some of our sewer pipes, and in fact carrying out the CCTV has been challenging in some areas because of the blockages and the inaccessibility of the camera work as well. But we will continue to work through that and pick off the higher risk critical assets, and then we've got a significant budget over the next 2 years. Yeah. There's some significant work that we'll be looking to get into there. Stormwater reviews, so we're still waiting on the final design for Elm Street for soakage aspect there, which is part of our global resource consent. And then we also had a budget for resolving the downstream catchment part near Bushtown, and I think I'll hand over to Dan now to say where we've got to on that aspect.
So with the reduction of flow requirement, the condition that requires a reduction of flow at Park Road, that has now been mitigated by the council purchasing the property. So that project has actually pivoted now to one of changing the consent conditions to remove that requirement. Tied into that, and not discussed in this report, We've done some extensive CCTV and scanning work on a critical pipeline, which is the one adjacent to this building and was responsible for, or surcharging was responsible for the flooding that occurred in roughly 2021. That information has taken a long time to process. It's a significant amount of data, so rather than just using CCTV, the actual scanning has used LiDAR, so we have basically a point cloud of that pipework. We understand that there are some protrusions through the pipe, i.e. pipes that have been laid after the fact through the pipe. We know that there's a lot of debris in the pipe itself, and only yesterday we found out that there is a significant reduction in pipe size in an area that we didn't know about, so it's historic. That reduction, we're just waiting for the finalised report associated with that, but that reduction alone would, and addressing some of these pipes that pass through the stormwater pipe will add to the level of protection and the return event for this particular building. So as we progress through the development of the next stormwater asset management plan, I think it's going to be really important for the committee to provide us with some guidance as to what level of protection we are designing our stormwater network for moving forward. Currently, roading networks are generally designed to carry a 1 in 5 year event. We have been installing newer stormwater infrastructure for a 1 in 10 year event, allowing for elements of climate change or intensity change in storms. In doing that, we need to start thinking about the overland flow path, which is going to be used once the network is overwhelmed. So there are we've got a really good hydraulic model that tells us what might happen in different events. And then we need to put another lens over that to make sure that we're comfortable that we have overland flow paths that will protect properties. So it's definitely a project in itself to actually establish the baseline as to where we want to be. And then from there, we will need to be future looking, particularly around that asset I've just been talking about. It's 100 years old. It's over 100 years old.
What size pipe is that?
It's a 950 by 930.
It's an arch, so
Yes.
it has various typical cross sections though.
Yeah.
So it's primarily vertical walls on the sides with a flat base. It's not flat base, it's actually got a 50 or 60 mil depression in the base. That's probably got in places 100 mil of material, gravels and so forth. And then it's a curved top, arched top. So
And
it's
brick,
different materials in different places
brick?
as well.
Or concrete?
Concrete,
Oh, concrete.
mostly,
Okay.
mostly concrete, but there is some brick as well. In fact, there are bricks in the pipe as well on the base. So it's been a good learning curve the last few months to getting this information. But yeah, in general, the 100+ year old pipe is in very good condition. There are just some areas that we need to investigate further and look for some remediation.
Is it quick or?
Can I just ask Ross, through the chair, we have this 100-year-old infrastructure, and you're obviously using CTV to assess the infrastructure. What percentage of it has been assessed accurately and been able to be looked at, and does that have a bearing on a note that I took previously that at a previous meeting that 25% of the pipes are going to need replacement? How far through, how near to 100% are we on actually seeing what we have underground?
The CCTV is, so for the wastewater network, it was carried out a large survey back in 1998.
Which has given us a very good benchmark.
We have a really good picture.
A really good benchmark based on that. It's not the best quality, but it's a very good reference point for us because the majority of the town was done for wastewater treatment.
Yes, yeah, and subsequently we've targeted CCTV on critical assets or assets where we know that we've had issues. So wastewater, we're fairly comfortable, and the good thing about the wastewater CCTV is we can look at a view from 1998, and then we can look at a view from recent times, and we're actually seeing the same defects. We're not necessarily seeing a lot more defects. So it gives us a steer as to how we look at the useful lives of some of those assets. So we're more focused now on the critical assets and making sure that we don't have failures on those. If we revert to stormwater, councils traditionally have not focused their CCTV programs on stormwater. It's a lot easier to CCTV a 150 or a 300mm pipe than it is to CCTV large diameter. But the work that we've done has been really, really useful for us. So we've got hydraulic models, we know what the pipes need to carry, and we know if they can't carry that, what actually occurs. And now we start to focus our future looking replacements, because it's unlikely that we'll be able to replace economically that particular pipeline on its current alignment, because subsequently, so to give it some context, that particular stormwater pipeline was laid in an old drain, and that's what happened back in the day, was you followed that alignment because you naturally had your overland flow path over the top of it. And subsequently, there's been construction, buildings are built, ground levels change, and you start to lose the overland flow paths, and then you start to get these problematic surface flooding, or worse than that, you actually have flooding through buildings.
The other thing with concrete, stormwater in particular, as long as you're not getting grits and rubbish into the pipe, it's not like wastewater where you've got sulfuric acid eating away at the concrete. There's actually very little that causes it physically to deteriorate, as long as you've got good inlet control.
So unfortunately we do not have good catch baskets or anything, and so it's direct access onto this 100-plus-year-old pipe for any debris, any leaves, anything. So that's some of the retrofitting that we would need to look at for the future in specific areas and prioritise that, because that is one of the problems that we have with the debris that's within the pipe.
Thank you, Ross.
Just also a little observation on item 14 of your report, David. If we think about the telemetry and SCADA, that went in and generally in this whole district and areas in the early 1990s, and we're now getting to the point where it's getting replaced, and it's actually given a lot of service and a very, very good return on investment, but nothing lasts forever. So and that need to upgrade is happening right across the country as well. Like, these things are all getting to pretty close to end of life. So they've lasted longer than I think anybody thought they were going to when they first went in. So
yeah, and as I've alluded to there, some of our equipment will no longer be supported by external parties, so we do have to shift to lift and create the change. But technology has also moved considerably in that time as well. So we've got a meeting later this month, I think, with one of our main providers to start that process to create that change, because some of it's going to have to happen quite quickly.
right. Recommendation that any further questions from anybody?
I just have one, if that's right, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just a query, Dan. A few years ago, we were looking at the ingress into stormwater from low-lying outdoor relief gullies and domestic properties, and we were looking at collars back then. Is that still on the radar?
Yep, we still, so talking to wastewater, there is still a body of work to be completed. So hydraulic models told us where the worst inflow is occurring.
Right.
We still have to sort of put boots on the ground and go and do those surveys of those low-lying gully traps to make sure that we address those. probably not as simple as just visiting properties and instructing people to make amendments. I think there needs to be a strategy around how we might do that, and it may be that we use that same area as a test bed to understand, the quantum of the issue and how best we might deal with that, having an affordability lens over that work as well.
So, sorry, it's getting mixed up between wastewater and
Yes.
stormwater.
It's a waste.
Racing ahead.
All right. Welcome, Craig.
Sorry for my lateness, another picture.
Right, we're on page 37 of the agenda.
So just to add to that, so that is actually a building related aspect as well, the low gully trap. So while there's an impact on the wastewater infrastructure, it is actually part of the building code for compliance that's not being met.
Does everyone around the table understand the
No,
low-lying gully
can I
traps?
ask some clarification?
Yeah.
So is this to prevent rainwater / stormwater going into the wastewater system?
Correct.
So
I remember talking about that.
for some people's gully traps, they might have concreted up to the lip of them so that
Yeah.
stormwater runs straight into the gully trap on the outside of the house, or reshaped it, which adds stormwater into the wastewater.
Right, so the
component.
natural
They should be
falls.
separated, and there's supposed to be,
Right.
there are rules to follow.
And sometimes accidentally a downpipe pipe might have found its way into that gully trap as well, like,
So
not deliberately.
No, accidentally the pipe.
Yeah.
to add further, that area that we're talking about has very, very poor drainage. It's got a clay pan. So after sustained rain, there's a lot of surface flooding on private property as a result of that.
Yeah.
And it might not be that the gully traps don't meet the building code. It might be that we need to exceed the building code
Right,
in order to
yeah.
prevent that happening.
Yeah.
So this is what we spoke a few years back around a public information around smoke testing
Yes.
and that sort of stuff, wasn't it? To identify those low gully traps and stop those peaks.
Is that enforceable, so if it's in excess of the building code?
And I think that's part of the strategy. So, you're going to end up with more nuisance flooding on private property.
If you
And
don't.
you have to try and balance that.
As we also alluded to, those overland flow paths being lost over time as well is another aspect of it.
So that's like that natural contour of the land.
How we know that this is a bit of an issue, when we have had storm events, we can see the ingress through the wastewater system on the SCADA system, and it ramps up really, really quickly. So we know it's not just wastewater,
Yeah.
it is these potential gully traps and other types of infiltration.
All right, recommendation that major projects and operational update report be received. Peter? Okay, all in favour?
Right.
Right, okay, brilliant. Risk register, and I've got, Dan is going to speak to that, maybe the CEO wants to speak to the first letter there as well. I will note for the committee that in the risk register that's in the agenda on the second item down, which has lots of big red colour around risks associated with central government reform, that red colour is probably
Bearing fruit.
or well ranked, shall we say. So, Dan, do you want, and the C, do you want to talk to issues that are contained in this part of the agenda?
Yep, so obviously the current risk register is presented. The purpose or the main purpose of the discussion would be to look at the impact of recent announcements, and ideally we need to try and identify the risks associated with that announcement, the current legislative requirements, i.e. the water services delivery plan, delivering on that, the internal business unit, the continuation of that work under current legislation, and and potential impacts, I suppose, associated with any future direction for the Three Waters activity. And of particular note, I'd like to sort of swing back to that whole catchment view requirement moving forward. So obviously when we move the regional planning into this discussion, what does that look like for us as well?
Yep. And just looking at the Head Start pathway, signed by two ministers, one of whom is the Minister of RMA Reform, I note that we haven't seen the legislation for RMA reform just yet, and that has significant potential to impact on a lot of council activities, including water activities around whatever the consenting and or charging regime might be around water coming out of that. So I guess still fits under that risk item around government reform, but something that the committee is going to need to stay on top of going forward. And obviously the legislation hasn't been tabled yet, so it's very hard to respond to something that doesn't quite exist yet. And I'm sure there will be work from the staff and advisors once that is tabled around council's response to RMA reform, let alone further discussion around local government realignment. So, are you wanting to comment here at all?
No, the only comment we can make, I think, at the moment is that we, the council has a public meeting tomorrow night.
Yep.
As the first step to get an indication from the public in what they would like the council to do. We have already been notified that our neighbours, in fact there was a public statement this morning coming out of Mackenzie that they are going to engage and get on board, as the indication is the same with Timaru District Council. So I guess by early next week, council will need to make a decision to engage or not engage. You've got to remember this is mooted as a voluntary process, but not so voluntary if you don't engage by October 2028, at which time the backstop process will cut in and they will make arrangements on your behalf as to the future of the council at that point, which is going to come around pretty quick. The other bit is the other thing I'll comment on is that the 90 days to come to a decision, I think, would have to be questioned in terms of the Local Government Act's need for a consolidated process about decisions of significance for the district. I believe this does not allow sufficient time for constructive or organised feedback or even opposition to what is proposed. I don't think it gives the council sufficient time to work with our ratepayers to explain potentially the consequences or benefits of making a decision of this significance, because there are many. So it's potentially, once again, not what the government wants to do. It's the time frame with which they are giving us the time frame to do it. And as you just mentioned, Mr. Chair, the RMA is first change of significance is with the select committee now. So we have decisions to make as to how the new spatial plans will connect to our asset management plans in terms of infrastructure around growth projections. On top of that, the DIA has said that we should proceed with our long-term plan, which has a 10-year outlook on potentially a 2-year subsistence. On top of that, councils are expected to step up and manage the reform overload, as was stated by DIA last week. There is no budget for this. So I guess as the Chief Executive, we will be subject to the decision of the council once it's made. But my job will be to either agree to the amount of workload I can then put on staff without access to significant budgets for consultants and contractors. There is an opportunity to work with our neighbours. I know that that's already, I think we've got a meeting next week, or I've been invited to a meeting next week, which we will attend once we know that we have a direction. And potentially if a group of councils agree to work together, there may be some savings in the investment in consultants and contractors across that particular group of councils. So there's lots to think about. As I say, I've been through a few of these processes before. I know when it comes to the crunchy end, the amount of work that will be required to be completed, particularly during the fact that we have no defined guidelines from the government. There is no transitioning legislation or even spoken about. Effectively, from what I can see, the government has said a council, a group of councils get together, come up with a plan of crayon on butcher's paper, and then we will design a transition piece of, to legalise that process after. So it's a bit like sort of, it's a circular argument, which is difficult to see and work with, but that's where we are. Yep. So therefore we will keep moving forward one foot in front of the other.
So from this committee's point of view, obviously we'll be getting feedback from council regarding the position adopted and the public meeting response and any further meetings after that. And in the interim, we have a quite substantive workload ahead of us implementing the current reforms. So, which I'm sure will keep us all busy. And I also note we have a general election later this year, so that things may change on the campaign trail, shall we say. All right, anything else from the risk register that any of the committee want to question or raise at this point?
Just in relation to what is proposed, I think it's really important that in our comms around from this committee and from council that we are very clear that we must still continue with this piece of work and implement this committee. That is done, that is legislated, and I think it's really important for council and staff that the public understand that we don't have a choice. We do still have to end a long-term plan. We do still have to proceed with this water committee and continue to do the good work that our community elected to do by choosing this setup, and that we fully back our team to continue with that work.
Yeah, I think I'd also reiterate the statement I made last meeting, which is councils are required to meet the legal requirements of the day. Yeah. And we're in that process with this committee. Whilst councils need to respond to a range of regional and central government proposals, until it's law, you get on with what the day job is, which is the current regulatory and legal frameworks. And that's been, my 42 odd years of local government, that's never changed. So I think that will continue.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of chat around why are we doing this, why are we continuing with this if it may change. We don't have a choice, and this is a really good plan and really good solution, and we've got to see that through.
Just a final comment through you, Mr. Chair, that if you have a look at the amalgamation of the Auckland councils back in the day, where they had, I think, they
8 came together.
They had 70 CCOs that were then negotiated down to, I think, what was it? Was 40 into 7 CCOs. So we need to have a look at any agreement moving forward, how our Talent business unit moves forward. And then you've got to look at the other councils around us that have other various types of CCOs to prevent duplication. They'll all have to be renegotiated. So this is just a sample of body of work that needs to be thought about.
Yep.
Bottom line is we have a water services delivery plan that we have to meet.
Yes, we do. We do.
So the most important thing is not to drop the ball in the meantime.
No, and the other thing is, sometimes these things get announced and with fanfare, and then the detail overtakes them often, and the process can run a lot longer than the initial announcement. And in the meantime, pretty sure that the good people of Waimate want their water services delivered well in accordance with legal requirements. So, yeah, Dan.
So through the chair, just on that note, I'm quite keen to review that particular item in the risk register and offer that back to council with some comments.
Yep.
In the services committee. So I just wanted to note while we were talking, so it's timing and integration with current planning processes, and probably the complexity associated with that. The lack of supporting legislation and or the timing of that legislation is the risk.
Yep.
And the risk, there is a risk of undermining our current position, which is to deliver on our water services delivery plan and stand up a ring-fenced business unit. So would that be a fair summary of what we've been talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think the other thing is, particularly around the RMA changes, there's significant risk there of change requirements are going to take a bit of effort to meet. The entire consenting regime could change yet. So, And at the moment, there's no way to quantify that. It's not in the budgets. It's not in the, all of those sorts of things. So we've got a decent sized risk sitting there, and until it's actually a bill or an act is really not. And whether that's going to get introduced this side of the closure of the Parliament for campaigning is anybody's guess. So
is that another risk that we need to add, and that's the financial risk?
There could be a significant financial risk, even just with RMA, let alone the amount of work around local government amalgamation or anything else like that. Yeah. And just an observation, so I was working for local government in '89 when that happened, and the big river systems are the sticking point. And the reason regional councils ended up as they are essentially was because of the big river systems. And that problem hasn't, because you have to manage them as a whole. And so that problem hasn't gone away. For those that remember, there used to be a Waitaki Valley Authority because it had all the power dams on it, and that got folded into Environment Canterbury. So, and you had North and South Canterbury catchment boards back in the day. So, the local government commission at the time spent a long time trying to sort out the river systems and the regional arrangements. And
that's all right, we've got 90 days.
You have, but what I'm trying to say is it might not be that quick a fix, based on historical precedent.
I think the 90 days will be to signal your intention rather than any sort of detail.
It's just very hard to lock into a position when you don't know the detail.
Yeah.
That's the risk, that's the concern.
It is, and so we've got that financial risk of just the amount of work, as the CE has already alluded to.
Mr. Chair, is there an expectation of being locked in, or of a trajectory?
I'm going to be at a conference next week with Chris Bishop. If I get the chance, I'll ask him. So, who knows?
I think the bottom line is you'll see there'll be a separate legislatively defined process for developing these proposals or reorganisational proposals. But councils, in the meantime, still have a law that says, the Local Government Act Special Consultative Process, especially Section 82 on fairness and equity. How do you do that within the timeframes that are available to us is going to be difficult. And as I come back to my main concern, and that is who is going to do the work and how is it going to be funded?
Yeah. You also, I'm keeping an eye on this, professionally I'm quite interested in it. Several of the mayors of the high growth areas and councils have already come out very strongly saying, hey, we've got different issues to deal with than this particular one at the moment. And you know, if you look at Selwyn and Queenstown being the two in the South Island, I mean, Selwyn's projected to be up over 200, District, 200,000 population by about 2050.
Wow.
You know, they're dealing with some 3,000 lot subdivisions at a go in areas that weren't previously slated for subdivision. You know, it's let's take Waimate and plonk it down in 12 months is what they're dealing with. And so, you know, there's all of those sorts of overlays sitting in the thing as well. And it isn't a 5-minute. Anyway, there's a conversation going on, and I'm sure that it'll be a good conversation locally tomorrow night. So Dan, anything else you wanted there?
No, did you want me to highlight that there is a Local Government Act compliance risk
Yes.
currently?
Yeah, and certainly I think we need to highlight the financial risk because there could be significant unbudgeted expenditure sitting in this particular set of statements.
And in terms of mitigations, that's a difficult question. What can you do? I suppose is it that we consider what the Head Start process looks like?
Well, council will be engaging with that. I would have thought maybe the mayor would be a better place to talk to that. I would come back to the statement I made right at the start of the meeting. New Zealand is the second most democratic country by international rankings. We are actually quite we're a democracy that engages, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of engagement around this subject over the next period from across the country. So
I think all we can do, Dan, is just monitor and reassess when further information comes to hand. Because as we've said that, you know, 40% of the RMA apparently is going out the door. No one's telling us what that 40% is.
Yeah. So this will be effectively a recommendation to the Audit and Risk Committee, just some modifications to this will get discussed again, obviously.
And this flows right across all the councils, not just the Three Waters activity.
I'm happy with that.
okay, good.
And again, just on that comment you just made about the Three Waters activity, can we just clarify for the public that when we talk about Three Waters, we're not talking about what the Labor government proposed as Three Waters, and that Three Waters is the general terminology used for drinking water, stormwater and wastewater.
Correct.
Because again, I've seen quite a bit of debate when Three Waters is referenced, that they think it's tied to that Labor implementation, and it's not just that as the industry terminology.
Yeah. Good. I mean, if one was to be brutally blunt about the impact of this level of change, that and this is, you know, I've thought about this from my own organisation's point of view, it's around staffing.
Yes.
You know, people just get to the point where they go, hey, you know, doing something different is starting to look really attractive, and you know, council has high quality staff.
Yep.
And it's I know from my discussions with Stuart, is acutely aware of what reform overload does to his team, and but that's right across the industry at the moment. It's not just Waimate, so it's an industry-wide problem. And yeah, it's around, I guess, what we would, you know, just keeping people without excessive workloads and making sure, you know, keeping the communications up and everybody knowing what's going on. The good news about the in-house business unit solution for Waimate District is you've not got the uncertainty of what does a water service organisation look like for your staff. I mean, some of the surrounding council staff still don't know where, what, how they're going to be working in a year's time. So when somebody from Australia is dangling a big salary and a very nice beach in front of you, and again, that's an industry-wide issue, and not just councils, it's consulting as well. So
I think the big thing is that you know, we have a clear pathway in front of us. we need to just knuckle down, get on, and deliver what we said we're going to deliver.
Yep.
A day is a long time in politics. Who knows what could happen in a day or a week or a month's time. This could all be thrown out and another fantastic brainwave coming up for another model. But I think that as far as the staff go, is they've got to realise that we've got a job to do. We're not going anywhere, and that we've just got to knuckle down and get on and deliver what we've got on our water service delivery plan.
Yeah. And I think you'll probably find tomorrow night, there's a very strong, supportive community of interest in Waimate that wants to continue to do things well. So, all right, we will call that done. Thank you for that report. That was Dan, wasn't it? We are on to waters. Do we want to recommend? Have we got a recommendation?
Happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Water Services Delivery Plan Implementation Monthly Update. Dan.
I'll take this as read, actually. This will be a standing report on a monthly basis currently. Everything's tracking on really well for us. Conversations with neighbours and the like give us some confidence that we're actually tracking really well. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Just want to say, great report. I've just got a question around the staffing, like the appointment of the procurement administrator, which was under the waters plan, and that's now called the asset group administrator. Does that mean that that is a shared role between council
That is
across the other asset groups? So it's a partially funded by the Water Services Delivery Unit and partially funded by council. Thank you.
That was to ensure that we still had cover for the remainder of the group.
Yeah, I did wonder how we were going to manage that side of things. So that's just a split. So that's actually a saving for the Water Services Unit then.
Yeah.
So just to summarise the report, Dan, and thank you, similar to the comments with Melissa's read, thank you for the blue. It made it very, very easy to have a quick look at what the updates were from the month before. Everything is in hand and progressing well. All right. Any other questions from committee? All right. Sorry, was that a from somebody? No? Okay, recommendation that the Water Services Delivery Plan Implementation Monthly Update report is accepted. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Right. Water Services Strategy. That's Dan again.
So I'll take the report as read. Subsequent to this, I've received an email last night, which is probably a more digestible summary. So progress at the moment is the Strategic Asset Management Plan is being drafted as a document in sections, establishes info gathered from the asset management infrastructure strategy and the water services delivery plan. So we're starting to get the framework around that SAMP. AMPs, much the same. We're following the POPO format, and base information comes from the 2025 asset management plans at the moment. The IDP, which is the investment plan, initial planning has commenced. Drafting the document once financial forecast reviews have been completed. So there's a bit of work for us to do internally in that space. And the water services strategy is now a working draft. So yes, and that's following the Water New Zealand guidance document. So yeah, things are looking good. Cool.
Excellent.
And generally following national direction or guidance as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. And just a note for the committee, there are councils and units around that are not even started on this yet, so you're in a good place. Yeah. Some that will be starting soon, it might be observed. Okay, so Water Services Strategy Monthly Update Report recommendation is as accepted. Craig, all in favour?
Right.
Compliance Status Report.
Yes, yeah, this was a request to have it as a monthly item, which is relatively easy for us to achieve. So you'll note that the attachments are very similar to performance reporting. Generally, everything is tracking really well. Looking at the drinking water quality assurance rules, there are incidents where we are only partially met, and there are good reasons for that. But there's also a very robust capital program that's addressing those issues. So there for your information, more than anything else. But happy to take any questions you have.
Sorry, I just had a question around Hookwai Tuna. Obviously, those issues will go away once the pipeline is
It's commissioned.
yeah. So in Tomato Arawai, they understand that they don't have an issue.
Yeah, they understand the project, they understand the timing of the project, the revised timing of the project, so yeah.
Yeah. So just for any members of the public looking in on this, we're talking about page 54 of the agenda, and there's a lovely big red square on that summary table, and that is not going to be fixed until the capital program is delivered, but everybody is on, the regulator and the program's underway, and everybody's looking forward to the day that is going to turn green. So and you can't really rush it any more than it is, so it's not going to turn green on its own, but it's in hand essentially.
Yes,
So,
yeah, that's
Yeah,
correct.
through you, Mr Chair, so there are other aspects or processes that are in place to help mitigate any potential risk with the public as well.
Mhm.
So that continues.
So water's safe to drink.
So just to clarify, there is effectively a boil water notice, and the boil water notice is there as a fallback position, until such time as we've actually commissioned. But there are, as Dave's alluded to, there are other processes that we are providing that actually add levels of protection through that.
So we've been mandated to put an advisory boil water notice on the scheme, which is what we have.
Yep, and you presumably communicating that on a regular basis to remind people and
Yes.
all those good things. Yep. All right. Performance measure reporting all seems pretty good. Any comments that you team want to make there, Dan?
Only I would suggest that if we look at the water performance measure for real water loss, that's still using the older calculation.
Yep.
So in future iterations, we'll move to using the water meter outputs, which we've been monitoring now for a number of months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly a year actually. And with that, the number of installs of water meters were up to nearly 2,000. So when I started here 16 months ago, we didn't, it was half that.
Yeah.
So there's been significant progress in that activity area.
So have you any early indication of that number's trending down, or?
Not at this stage. We haven't done the analysis yet. But it's a dual purpose for us. It's going to inform, as the minutes alluded to, it's going to inform that charging structure or the tariff structure in the future. But at the same time, once we have got a good amount of information, so a 12-month period, that will give us a much better view of the real water loss because of the seasonal changes. So definitely a body of work that we're quite excited to carry out.
Good. It'll be interesting in a year or so's time to get an updated, real, better set of figures. And no wastewater overflows, which is fantastic. Okay.
In quarter three.
In quarter three.
Yes.
Still fantastic. Though I suspect some of those are a bit related to rain and blockages that you haven't got a lot of control over.
I suppose what's defined here as a dry weather overflow, and that's if you've had less than 1 millimetre of rain in a 24-hour period up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a low trigger for dry weather.
So what triggers those overflows, Tim? What's the cause of them?
Dry weather overflows are generally due to blockages.
Right.
Wet weather overflows are generally when the pipe is
Yeah. I was just wondering what the dry water ones were.
Yeah.
Typically, it's a blockage of some description.
So we're still having trouble with the old wipes of the pipes thing?
Not as much as we used to. Probably the trouble that we have that's likely to cause these dry weather overflows is the installation of the fibre around town.
Ah,
Yeah, we've had quite a lot of damage as a result of that, and some of that doesn't manifest for a long period of time.
mm.
Other times it
So the
manifests
fibre
there.
installers are responsible for the repair costs?
We recovered a significant amount in the earlier days.
Right.
Yes.
Not so easy now.
No. So Herbert Street is a good example of that, where it was only a few months ago that we had one property, then the next property, all phoning in. It's taken time for these problems with the sewer laterals have been drilled right through to be realised. It has taken a very long time before there was an issue reported. So for something that was conducted, I don't know, a year or earlier.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you for that report, and just on behalf of the committee, it's easy to see what's good and what's not, which is really good. And looking forward to the performance measures, the quality being a full green as soon as it can be, which will be even better. Do we have a recommendation for that part of the report to be accepted? All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Right, we are at the public excluded part of the meeting, and we need to make sure we've got the live stream turned off, I think, is...
I think we just need to take a resolution to move into public.
All right.
Yep.
Once that resolution's tabled, we then switch the camera.
Okay.
Happy to be removing the public excluded.
All right.
And that is at 11:22. Alright, now give me some minutes.